when I entered my community, so 44 years ago, and I'll be 69 next month. When I was in the novitiate, it so happened that year, by the grace of God, it was a time when we got to go home and visit our families once a month. Prior to that, your family came to the novitiate on a Sunday afternoon, ever so often, and spent a little time for what me and my classmates used to call organized joy. But now in 1974, we got to go home. So on this particular Saturday morning, it was an overnight, went home on Saturday, came back on Sunday. This particular Saturday morning, my dad came to get me, and I was in a snit. I had a run-in with one of my formation team members earlier that day, and I knew she was wrong. God knew she was wrong. I don't know why she didn't know she was wrong. And I was complaining and complaining and complaining, and my father, I don't know if you know Los Angeles, but we were on the 405 freeway, leaving Encino, going into Los Angeles. My father pulled off the highway, parked the car, and he said, "Let me tell you something. Those women are doing the same thing you are trying to do, the best they can. So when they mess up, forgive them, so that when you mess up, they might forgive you. And maybe you might ask Sister Joan why she said what she said. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it. You just might know. Next time I want to ask for that, I might go this way. Or maybe the fact is, I don't need that at all." My dad said, "Am I clear?" "Yes, sir." Started the car and we went home. To understand, in fact, that sometimes when we talk about God's peace, we believe that it is a state without stress or turmoil. That there's no worry if you have God's peace. There's no concern. There's no anger. There's no frustration. Peace is a tranquil state. Some of us believe that, in fact, it's unshakable. It's almost euphoric. But all of us know that life is full of ups and downs. And God's peace is not about the absence of trouble. God's peace is about getting us through it. I love television. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do. When I was teaching at the Franciscan School of Theology, I remember one of our professors of spirituality said, "People think it's odd that I don't have a television." I just put my head down. Somebody else said, professor of moral theology, I love that term, moral theology. So are you for moral theology as opposed to immoral theology? So professor of moral theology said, "I don't have one either." And he said, and the reason I don't have one is, he said, the things that I like to watch, I probably watch too much of, and the rest of the stuff scares me. I put my head down. Somebody said, "Eva, how about you? Do you watch TV?" I said, "I subscribe to TV Guide." To understand, in fact, that for us, very often, we are given a little treasure, a little insight in some of the places we least expect it. There was a program some years ago called A Different World. And in this program, there's a story about college students. So these kids who've gone off to college. In this story, one of the characters, whose father was a police officer, gets shot. And it's so serious they don't know if he's going to make it through this ordeal. So Dwayne Wayne and Whitley and the gang, Freddie, they jump in the car and they're off to see after their friend Kim, whose father has been shot. And it's very serious. Kim says they don't know if my dad's going to make it. So Freddie, who, if you ever watch the story, Freddie is unchurched. Freddie was raised by a mother and father who simply did not believe it was necessary to participate at all in organized religion. But Freddie realizes that she has never prayed before. So in this one episode, Freddie goes to a window, kneels, looks out, finds a star, and she says, God, please, please, she says, heal Kim's dad. Make it all right. Don't make him pay the price for trying to do something good. Don't punish him with that. But make it all right. Heal him. Bring him back to full strength. She says, now I know you don't know whose voice this is because you haven't heard it before. But I'm counting on you to listen. I'm counting on you to hear. I'm counting on you to answer just this one prayer. I won't bother you no more. Within a short period of time, Kim comes back to tell her friends that her father is going to live, but they are still uncertain if he will ever walk. And so Freddie says, that's it. I gave one prayer I asked, she says, and it didn't get answered. I ain't praying no more. And it was Dwayne Wayne who says to her, what? You think prayer is about asking for what you want? Prayer is about asking how to manage what you get. For us to understand that God's peace is that solid rock, that blessed assurance. It is that place where we know this will stand forever. No matter what else happens, this is my core value. This is my deepest longing. This is what I aspire to. This is what I believe God says when God calls my name. This is the me I want to be. God's peace is a blessed assurance. I grew up in a classic extended family. 13 cousins in my elementary school, 5 of them in my classroom. My grandmother and grandfather, my mother's parents, lived at 3663 South Van Ness, and we lived 2 blocks around at 3663 Second Avenue. If you went 4 blocks north, 4 houses north, from my grandparents was my mother's sister Jerry. If you crossed the street and went 5 houses more north, was Auntie Doris. If you went around the corner, was Nananne, my grandmother's sister, and she and Uncle Renee had mothered and fathered 8 children who all had children. I have 78 first and second cousins on my mother's side. I was fortunate enough in 1949, although born into segregation, to have known my great-grandmother, who was about this tall in my childhood mind, but Mama was certainly no more than about 4'10". She was a deep chocolate brown and she had wavy hair, so we said they were some either a Native American or a Frenchman. They were born in Louisiana. It could have been either one. In that place somewhere, my mother would say, somebody jumped the fence. My great-grandmother, when I knew her as a child, was already well into her 70s. And I remember a woman who would dress in her one of her best dresses. I don't ever remember seeing her dressed down. The male was in a beautiful dress with a crocheted collar, with a rosary in hand, sitting in a rocking chair in the kitchen. My grandmother would be cooking. Everybody stopped at Mama Eva, my grandmother's name Eva. Everybody stopped at Mama Eva's house on the way home. And I remember as a child sitting on the floor watching my great-grandmother crochet. And she would tell me stories. I asked her one day, maybe I was 10 years old, "You always have a rosary in your hand. Don't you get tired of that?" She said, "I never get tired because I have nothing else to hold on to assure me of what else I can hold on to and what else I need to reach out for." I was 10 years old. I was like, she talked funny. I said, "What was it like to grow up in Louisiana in the 1800s, in 1902? And she said, "I'll let your grandmother tell you about that." That's all she said. My great-grandmother died when I was 16 years old. And I went immediately to my grandmother and said, "Tell me something about her." And she said, she was quite a woman. My grandmother was more fair-complected than I am, the oldest of three. She had a sister who was a light brown, second of the three, and her brother was darker than Aunt Georgiana. We called them the Rainbow Coalition. My daddy said that recessive gene will pop up every time. Wait on it. Count on it. So my grandmother said, "Let me tell you something about your great-grandmother and what she meant by holding on to God and a blessed assurance that God is in charge, no matter what the circumstance or the situation, that God's gonna work it out. Maybe not when you think He should, maybe not on your timeline, maybe not the way you think God should, but God will work it out." She told me that when she was a child, born in 1900, my grandmother, in New Orleans, that when she was a child, her mother, my great-grandmother, would dress herself as a maid and take her two daughters, Uncle Ed was too young, and walk my grandmother to the white school, taught my grandmother not to call her mama, but walked my grandmother to the white school, and then she would walk my Aunt Georgiana, who we called an aunt, walk her to the black school. One day, my grandmother said to my great-grandmother, who's walking down the street in a maid's uniform that she made, "Why can't sister go to school with me?" And the reply was, "They won't teach her because she's black." My grandmother said, "Well, what am I?" And she said, "You're mine, but you can pass." And my grandmother said, "If they won't teach her, they can't teach me." So she went with her sister to the black school. Now, my great-grandmother made sure that they had a tutor or something or whatever, but my grandmother never finished beyond the 6th grade. To understand that seeking God's peace for a woman who sat in a rocking chair, died in her early 90s, without ever saying a disparaging word about anybody, would cook and feed whoever came to the door, would remind you, in fact, that there was trouble that needed to be tended to. She would say, "Did you hear about whatever the misfortune was? What we gonna do about that? How can you help? Who else do we need to ask?" It's a shame sometimes what people have to carry in their heart. My great-grandmother never held bitterness. When I said to her once, maybe I was 14, and she was asking me to thread a needle for her. You know how when you are a child and an older person asks you to thread a needle, and what's going through your mind is, why can't this person see that that thread goes through that hole? Some of you in this room need to hear, if you live long enough, you will ask somebody to thread a needle. I cross-stitch. I used to cross-stitch on airplanes. Now I cross-stitch underneath a magnifying glass about this big, and it's got a light rim around it about the top. To begin to understand that if you can simply not focus on the pain, but on the blessed assurance. Sarah started us off this morning with looking at making peace with ourselves, peace with our neighbor, peace with God. And it seems to me that, in fact, when we talk about peace, we have to, in fact, understand that pursuing it is a lifelong process. Not only because there are certain circumstances in life for which we have no control, but also because of how we are made to have peace with ourselves. I know that I see the glass half full, but I also know that other people, gratefully some friends of mine, see it, I see it half empty. That friends of mine see it half full. So I call up Tina, or I call up Marty, or I call up Jamie and say, "Baby, there's more here than meets my eye. Let me tell you what I'm dealing with. What else do I need to consider?" To let ourselves realize that our experience, our temperament, has helped to inform the way we engage in the world. God's peace, a blessed assurance that this too shall pass. God's peace helps someone to say, trouble don't last always. God's peace has raised up in the African American community prayers that the devil don't mess with, the Lord don't bless. God's peace, who allowed my Aunt Lorraine, my grandmother, my mother, my Auntie Jerry, my Auntie Doris, my ma'am, my great-grandmother, to say, just do your best and God will do the rest. God's peace. To know that the arc of history is long and we have taken our place on the line. God's peace has raised up the gospel song. Don't have to wait till the battle is over. You can shout now, because you know that in the end, God is going to win. God's peace, to understand that I enjoy a life that my great-grandmother never knew. But she held on to her integrity and her hope and her faith so that my life would be better. God's peace, not only for us and our lives, but to pave a way for the one who will come after. 7 generations, the Native Americans say, to live your life in such a way that the good you do, the hope you share, the love you generate will last for 7 generations and provide a platform upon which somebody else will stand. What is it, I would ask, do you rest your heart upon? And I just would like to ask you to ponder that for a few moments. What do you rest your heart upon? Because if you pursue it, it should give you a place to stand without apology, without excuses, without shame. Your knees might be trembling a little bit because everybody might not like seeing you in that spot. But you know you have to be there or never get up again. You know that you have to be there or live your life in pretense. What do you rest your heart upon?